Look, let's just break this down and break this down well. There's a lot of things that this is, and there's a lot of things that this 2030 World Cup isn't. Of course, the CONMEBOL, Alejandro Dominguez comes out and makes it sound as if it's this huge victory for South American football to have 3 matches out of, I think, 104 in South America. Not only that, the teams that end up playing those matches have to go across the Atlantic to be able to join the rest of the competition over in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. It's this disregard for protocols. It's this disregard for what is established and what should be done. Obviously, let's start out in a World Cup that will be 48 teams. Everybody and their mother basically qualifies into this competition. You have the most ridiculous line of logic that you're hearing from FIFA and from CONMEBOL. You haven't heard from UEFA yet, but it'll be somewhere along those lines that they're going to be, obviously, if for CONMEBOL 3 matches is a success, imagine what it must be for UEFA. And of course for the CAF, who also haven't mentioned much as of yet. But to me, it ends up being one of the most ridiculous ideas that have ever been created. It ends up being just this appeasement in order to have power or continue having power, because that's the way Gianni Infantino has been able to handle things ever since he's arrived to FIFA. Is well, let's give everything to everyone and keep everybody happy and give everybody a chance. Great. But then he started tinkering with things in order to have that appeasement. Things like the World Cup. Things like the overall calendar, where he's been one of those quote-unquote champions of the players. Well, that ends up not being the case, because the more his actions have gone and been seen, they end up being more and more exposed as for what they are, which are, well, something that ends up appeasing the commercial sponsors and the people that are in this and able to earn the maximum amount of money possible and the maximum amount of profit possible. So we end up seeing this, and it ends up being something just absolutely ridiculous in terms of what FIFA is doing, in terms of what FIFA looks to do with this, with their biggest property and the biggest brand and the biggest event, the biggest sporting event in the world. To me, it's one of the most embarrassing things that could emerge in terms of how a sport is being handled, because it is slowly being destroyed. It is slowly being destroyed because we have players that have very little rest. We have players that break down on a consistent basis. More than ever, we have players breaking down because they don't have any rest, because the calendars are so intense and so extensive that their rest periods end up being less and less, and the recovery times end up being less and less. And now you end up adding a 48-team World Cup, 104 games, and a handful of teams that will have to travel across the Atlantic in 2030 to be able to play the continuation of a World Cup. Again, it ends up getting embarrassing by the day. It really does, because now it's reaching new levels. It really is. And you really don't know exactly where this is heading, because, I forgot to mention, let's add a Club World Cup as well. I forgot to mention that as well. And it ends up being embarrassing. It ends up being something that really ends up having people slowly get turned off with the game, because with more injuries, more breakdowns, well, look, there'll be breakdowns of players, but there'll be other ones that come in, but it ends up diluting the product at the end of the day. Truly not the best day for football when it comes to the news that FIFA and CONMEBOL have been able to come out with. Ends up being not borderline. It is a complete embarrassment to the game.